Exodus chapter 14. The persecution of the Egyptians. 1. The Lord said to Moses. 2. Tell the Israelites to change course and camp near Pi-Hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea. Camp by the sea, in front of Baal-zephon. 3. Pharaoh will think that the Israelites are wandering in confusion, surrounded by the wilderness. 4. Then I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will persecute them. Yet I will be glorified through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And so did the Israelites. 5. They told the king of Egypt that the people had fled. Then Pharaoh and his counselors changed their minds and said, "What have we done? We let the Israelites out and we lost our slaves." 6. Then Pharaoh had his chariot ready and took his army with him. 7. He took all of Egypt's chariots, including 600 of the best of these chariots, each with an officer in command. 8. The Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he persecuted the Israelites, who were marching triumphantly. 9. The Egyptians, with all of Pharaoh's horses and chariots, the horsemen and the infantry, went out in pursuit of the Israelites and caught up with them when they were encamped by the sea, near Pi-Hahiroth, opposite Baal-zephon. 10. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked at and saw the Egyptians marching toward them. And, terrified, they cried out to the Lord. 11. They said to Moses, "Was it for lack of tombs in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? What did you do to us, getting us out of there?" 12. We had already said to you in Egypt, "Leave us alone. We will be slaves of the Egyptians. Better to be slaves of the Egyptians than to die in the wilderness." 13. Moses answered the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and see the deliverance that the Lord will bring today, because you will never again see the Egyptians you see today." 14. The Lord will fight for you, just calm down. The passage through the middle of the sea. 15. Then the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." 16. Lift up your rod and stretch out your hand over the sea, and the waters will split so that the Israelites will cross the sea on dry land. 17. But I will harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will persecute them. And I will be glorified by the defeat of Pharaoh and his entire army, with his chariots and his knights. 18. The Egyptians will know that I am the Lord when I am glorified with the defeat of Pharaoh, with his chariots of war and his knights. 19. Then the angel of God who was going at the head of the armies of Israel withdrew, placing himself behind them. The cloud column also came out of front of them and stood behind. 20. Between the Egyptians and the Israelites. The cloud brought darkness to one and light to the other, so that the Egyptians could not approach the Israelites all night. 21. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord turned away the sea and turned it into dry land, with a strong east wind that blew all that night. The waters parted. 22. And the Israelites crossed the middle of the sea on dry land, having one wall of water on the right and another on the left. 23. The Egyptians pursued them, and all the horses, chariots, and knights of Pharaoh went after them to the middle of the sea. 24. At the end of the night, from the top of the pillar of fire and cloud, the Lord saw the army of the Egyptians and put them in confusion. 25. He caused the wheels of their cars to start loosening, so that they had difficulty driving them. And the Egyptians shouted, "Let's flee from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." 26. But the Lord said to Moses, Stretch out your hand over the sea, that the waters may return upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. 27. Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and at daybreak the sea returned to its place. When the Egyptians were fleeing, they went against the waters, and the Lord threw them into the sea. 28. The waters came back and covered their chariots and their horsemen, the whole army of Pharaoh who had pursued the Israelites into the sea. No one survived. 29. But the Israelites crossed the sea by stepping on dry land, having one wall of water on the right and another on the left. 30. That day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and the Israelites saw the Egyptians dead on the beach. 31. Israel saw the great power of the Lord against the Egyptians, feared the Lord, and placed their trust in him, as well as in Moses, his servant.